Well, so I was curious about what, specifically you had thought to say about the production.
I wanted to put on stage with this wonderful cast that we have a bohème that I would die to go see. So we're setting.
Okay, now I'm interested.
Yes, so we're setting the whole thing in the time period that I chose. Obviously, it has to be before penicillin, because if we
Right.
have penicillin, then
She doesn't die of
Mimi doesn't die of tuberculosis. And I loved the fraternal bond between Rodolfo and Marcello, and at the time in France, just before the First World War, I would say maybe 1895 to 1910. At that time, these friendship, honor, love for one another had a much more gravitas feeling, and so that immediately introduced itself to me as an interesting as a period to be embraced, because bohème was actually premiered in the late 18th century, I think 1896, and by placing it there, it felt the most current, and for me, I'm always amused by how the Bohemians make it work. The fierce belief that they're not part of the bourgeoisie, and they need to just stick it out, even if I die of hunger and starvation and of cold. Bohème has been La Bohème, the opera in itself, has been a constant companion for so long. I've had my arrival internationally as a singer with it when I did the Baz Luhrmann Bohème on Broadway, which we first premiered in San Francisco in its preview, then performed it on Broadway for a better part of a year and a half, took it to Los Angeles. So if anything, if nothing else, but the role of Marcello and the opera of La Bohème, I've performed more than any other, closely followed by Don Giovanni, which I'm sure everybody saw. And it's the second time for me directing it. The first time was in Mendocino in 2009. And this is the second time directing it, but this is unique because I'll be on stage singing and directing as well.
Is this the same production from your director standpoint? You know what I mean?
Not really, because back then there was no budget for set, and there was no intrinsic group of people that were bringing this to fruition. It was originally conceived as a semi-staged bohème, but operas like Giovanni, Bohème, and Le Nozze di Figaro, the big standard pieces, you can't semi-stage it, or it's like you half live your life. So I ended up just walking through the streets of Mendocino, old town Mendocino, asking, can I have that bench? Can I have that table? You're still using that tea kettle? And people were amazingly giving and generous. So many people then, they came to the show and said, "Oh, that's our rug, that's my chair, that's my ladder," and that's how we built the set. So initially, the story is very much the same. We have the same characters, we have the Bohemians, but now I was actually able to, with more time, to come up with a bohème that, in no means, and I guess I am gravitating toward the more pure side of opera, or puristic side of opera, did I feel a need that bohème needed to be, or the one that I'm trying to create, would have to cause controversy.
Okay.
Controversy, but I wanted to put on stage with this wonderful cast that we have a bohème that I would die to go see. So we're setting.
Okay, now I'm interested.
Yes, so we're setting the whole thing in the time period that I chose. Obviously, it has to be before penicillin, because if we
Right.
have penicillin, then
She doesn't die of
Mimi doesn't die of tuberculosis. And I loved the fraternal bond between Rodolfo and Marcello, and at the time in France, just before the First World War, I would say maybe 1895 to 1910. At that time, these friendship, honor, love for one another had a much more gravitas feeling, and so that immediately introduced itself to me as an interesting, as a period to be embraced, because bohème was actually premiered in the late 18th century, I think 1896, and by placing it there, it felt the most current, and for me, I'm always amused by how the Bohemians make it work. The fierce belief that they're not part of the bourgeoisie, and they need to just stick it out, even if I die of hunger and starvation and of cold, we're gonna stick together. One driving aspect that for the 20 years has been very true for me was, what do these characters want? And when pursuing that, then I find myself in a race with my own, as a performer and as a director, in intentions. I want to feed that question. What does Musetta want in this moment from Marcello? Why is she singing to him? And to answer those questions, and to answer the greedy hearts of our audience that want to just voraciously eat up our struggling, our loving, our strifes, is the lifeblood of this piece. And that is, I think, why it's being performed so much, and it's so universal and timeless. It fits into every time, into every consciousness.
Here's the thing I am curious about. As my first incarnation as a singer myself, I remember the auditions for the Broadway production being done. I was in Chicago at the time, finishing my master's degree, and we got the various audition notices, and it was talk about, they're taking bohème to Broadway, which of course, as idealistic purist singers, you've got to be kidding. They're going to do bohème on Broadway, please. However, when we learned that they were actually casting what we consider legit singers, that kind of, leveled out that skepticism. Yeah. But I've really been curious, what did that experience, because obviously it's a different kind of production. That's not traditional opera. On the other hand, it's not kind of the Euro style of completely undoing the opera to redo it. Yeah. We're kind of turning it into, if you do the apples and oranges comparison, that was something, a half-breed. Yeah. And what was your take on that? I never did see the production.
When I first started the rehearsal process, I thought, well, Baz is probably going to show up once a week and the AD is going to do all the work, and we have just Baz Luhrmann but that wasn't the case. He was there for 10 hours every day, and he worked with us very intensively. And for the first couple of weeks of our very extensive rehearsal period, we didn't even sing. We spoke the words to each other. So we made dramatic sense of it first, until that became our norm. So he, in a way, stripped away all the mannerisms of opera, and he taught us to just go for the essence and to find the truth in every moment. And all of a sudden it took on the speed of life, and in this case, dwindling life that is on the way out. The very first scene, she comes in, she's practically dying already, and her fierce hanging on to life was what Baz was so wonderful in bringing out. And ever since then, that changed me as a performer, and now I have a chance to direct it again. I will always want to ride that wave of what is the essential truth, what is the taboo that otherwise we would not to allow ourselves to go to. What if we did? Let's see what happens. Can we charge forward? Can we push the envelope in that beautiful framework that Puccini has given us? What is, can we make sure that every single little phrase that otherwise, might be considered, oh well, he or she is just talking about this or that. What if it all mattered? And what if, you, the audience, coming to see the show, what if that mattered most to us? Having a feeling of, we get to share this with you. We get to satisfy your craving while satisfying ours.
It's interesting you say that, because as one of the most engaging performers I've ever seen, you sharing that experience sheds light to me on why you are that performer today.
Thank you. My mother never shushed me as a child, and and now Livermore must endure this. Yeah. If you were in this cast, which role would you be singing? Because I never heard you sing.
At this point, that's a good question. Musetta used to be my role, and I look like a Musetta.
Yes, you do.
All the way into
and
the...
I'm a Marcello.
And I'm sorry,
I know
Musetta
that.
is a redhead, you know.
Yeah.
But these probably me. I've gone a little more towards the spinto. Though I guess depending on the size of the cast. I mean, Musetta is still an appropriate role vocally.
Totally.
It just depends on the size of the house and you know, all that sort of thing.
That's one of the things why I love Livermore, because you can do like operas like Tosca, but you can actually get away with really refined, intimate piano singing because the acoustics are so wonderful.
Right.
So wonderful.
Yeah, it makes it very easy there.
Yeah.